everyone, and thanks for joining me for another episode. I am Andy with Integrity Data Insights, and I help other companies with their reporting and their analytics. And I'm so thrilled to have my guest today, Gina Tabasso. And Gina heads the company called Barracuda B2B Marketing. And so, Gina, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time.
You are so welcome. I'm grateful to be a guest. It's good to see you again.
You too. Yeah, so let's jump right into it. And I guess before we even do that, like I've always had an affinity for marketing. I really feel like it's an important thing, and I've kind of always been around marketers, so I know enough to be dangerous, I guess. But getting into getting into it. So your company's called Barracuda. Tell me about that name, how you came up with it, and kind of what that means.
Yeah, that's a fun story. I actually got the name from a client of mine. So I was working for a consulting firm, and I had a client, and we completed a project for him. And at the end of the project, he said to me, "With all love and respect, Gina, you are a barracuda." He's like, "You just go at it, you get it done, you keep things on track, you're so organized." He's like,
Oh,
"I'm not, I'm all over the place. And if it wasn't for you, this project never would have gotten done." And so that kind of stuck with me. I'm just one of these
yeah.
people who gets things done. I'm fast, I'm efficient, I just go after it. And so that's where my name came from.
Is it any relation to the song from Heart? I think you've referenced that. I love that song. So
I do hear that song constantly when I say the name of my company, but it was just because that's what he called me. I mean, it was more related to the fish. I mean, I think the barracuda is one of the fastest swimming fish in the world. And
nice.
so
Oh, it's
that's
exciting. Hey, it sticks. That's really good. So let's dive in. I guess so you do a lot of work in the manufacturing space. Tell me about why manufacturing, or how'd you got into it, or what you like about it, those kind of things.
Yeah, well, when I was in college, it wasn't called marketing, it was called advertising back then.
Right.
So I majored in advertising, and when I came out of college, I was looking for my first job. And I thought naturally that I was going to go to an agency. I'm going to go work at an advertising agency. Well, what I found was that back then they paid junior copywriters nothing.
Yeah.
You literally would have had to live at home with your parents or have four roommates. And
Oh
I
yeah.
had a rent payment, a student loan payment, a car payment. So I decided to start applying directly with companies and go corporate.
Yeah.
And the company that hired me was a manufacturing company. They made vibration analysis equipment for large rotating machinery. And so that was my first job out of college. And then through the course of my career, I ended up working in uh, construction, automotive, manufacturing, distribution, a lot of industrial companies, and really got to understand B2B marketing and their specific challenges. And I just fell in love with manufacturing. If you look around the room that you're in right now, like
Yeah.
everything is manufactured by somebody.
Right.
Everything you're wearing, everything you're sitting in, everything you get into to get to work every day. And so it's kind of a geeky, nerdy thing. Like I
Yeah.
love to go take plant tours and see how things are made and think about the people who made what I'm touching right now, these salt of the earth people who work so hard to give us a good life.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah, I've always been a big fan too, and I have one client in that space too, and it's fascinating. You just walk around, you're like, man, it's huge machinery and different things and different processes. It's kind of mind blowing, but
And nowadays, it's so high tech. It's not your grandparents' facility where it's greasy and dirty and noisy. There's such amazing technology in the space now. Um, I
there we
think we
go.
lost Andy here,
Yeah, we
viewers.
blacked
We got
out
a
for a
little
minute. Sorry about
freeze.
that.
I covered for you.
You're okay. Good. No,
I'm
thanks
the
for that.
co-host.
Yeah, I love the I thanks for your thoughts on the manufacturing. It's just seems like a great industry and just great people and
Hmm.
really good. So let's dig into marketing a little bit. I mean, what are some of the challenges kind of you run into with I mean, I'm sure you work with all kinds of different size companies, but small to mid companies, I think seems like kind of your niche. And what things do you run into helping those kind of clients out?
Yeah, I usually work with companies small to mid, which means usually 50 million or less in revenue, usually 100 employees or less, because at that size, they don't have an in-house CMO. They don't usually even have a marketing department. It might be one junior level marketing person who's doing, very
Right,
tactical work. So with that said, because of their size and the lack of in-house resources, a lot of times they're either not doing marketing or they're doing it kind of scattershot approach. Let's try this, let's try this. They don't often have a strategy. They don't often have a foundational marketing program. So as far as challenges go, I think the top two challenges when I go in and do an assessment and put together a marketing strategy with, I shouldn't say without exception, the majority of the time, number one, CRM. They don't have CRMs. They're using an Excel spreadsheet.
yeah,
If they have a CRM, the sales team isn't using it. So you can't track return on investment. You can't track the buyer journey and conversion points if you're not getting the data. Data is so important. The other thing I see is that a lot of times their websites. Those are the two places we need to start. The websites often are old, outdated, not built to really standards that make it
right.
indexable by Google. So there's not any search engine optimization or keywords. There's not a lot of content. So a lot of times that's where I end up having to start is CRM implementation and website updates.
Interesting. And yeah, that's I've worked with quite a bit of CRMs. Do you find any that I think on one other show you mentioned one that you love. I forgot to look it up, but I haven't but is there any particular ones you like working with?
I have used most of not a lot of the small ones, not a lot of the ones that a solopreneur or entrepreneur is using, because
Right,
I've worked for more companies that are using a corporate scale
right,
CRM and marketing automation platform. But I've used, Salesforce, HubSpot, Acton, ExactTarget, Zoho, CRM, ClickDimensions Power Pack. The one that I'm using personally for myself and my business is the one that I think you mentioned. It's called Connectly,
yeah,
and it's not cheap for like a solopreneur. It's about $197 a month, but it has everything. It can do everything without the cost of like a HubSpot. There's no plugins, there's no additional modules, no additional
right.
licenses. You don't pay more for more contacts. It's like that's what you pay, and you get every functionality imaginable. And so that's the one that I'm kind of currently in love with. That I think if I find some clients in the future that don't have a CRM and need something foundational that's not too complicated and not too expensive, that's probably where I'd steer them. HubSpot can get really complex for a small organization. They don't need that much power.
Right. Yeah, thanks for that. That's great. Yeah, and my just a quick story. I've done some work with some of my clients where they need to get that information out so that they can kind of report on everything. So I've done some work where I've extracted data out of the Salesforce, and I've used APIs to get it in and out, but it's yeah, it's a pretty critical system. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So you take a pretty data-driven approach to marketing. Maybe tell me about some of the metrics and things that you look at, or when it comes to marketing, that you think people should be looking at and measuring.
Well, I will back it out backwards out of marketing into sales. So a lot of times when a marketing agency goes into an engagement, they're focused on marketing. When I go into an engagement, one of the first things I do is a sales assessment because I have to understand your sales process, your sales playbook, your sales timeline, your sales cycle, your sales training. Are you a mechanical engineer or a machinist that came up through the shop floor and you're technically brilliant and can talk to a customer about the product inside and out, but don't know how to convert or how to sell, because I'm only as good as the sales team. I could generate 1 million qualified leads
Yeah.
under the sun, and if the sales team can't convert those, then I can't show a return on investment. So I start
Right.
out there, and I start out looking at that CRM if they have one, and really digging into the data and looking at, what am I up against? Like, how many leads do you need to get how many conversations, to get how many quotes, and of those quotes, how many typically convert? So we've got to look at that data, because then navigating that data backwards, that will tell me how many leads I need to generate and the kinds of leads I need to generate. And I can only do that appropriately if I understand the sales process.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I talked to someone the other day that's in the marketing space, and he was saying he had to kind of have a challenging conversation with one of his clients because they were kind of, some back and forth about the definition of kind of what is a qualified lead. And it was
Yeah.
kind of like, the person was kind of pushing back on him saying, well, I didn't get the sale. So, it must not have been a good lead. But then his point is, well, the marketing and sales kind of go together. So you can't, they both need to go hand in hand. You can't, it's still a qualified lead, even if you weren't able to close it.
Well,
So,
I can speak to that too, because that's another thing, especially in manufacturing, the kind of clients I work with, they tend to be very they're sell organizations. And
mhm,
when you're a sell organization, you're focused at bottom of funnel. So we've got this marketing funnel. And when you bring in leads, those are top of funnel leads. That's what marketing people do. It's about relationships. So the
right,
top of funnel, they're not ready to buy, they're not ready to consider, they don't want to be sold at and pitch slapped. They want education, they want awareness, they want to see you as a thought leader, they want to trust you. And then you nurture those to middle of funnel, where you start to tell them what you do, how you can help them, what role you play in their life, until you get them to that bottom of funnel where the salespeople can actually start quoting them. And so I would almost say there's 3 kinds of leads. There's top, middle, bottom of funnel.
yeah,
Once you get them to bottom of funnel, they're a marketing qualified lead. We pass them off to the sales team. They further qualify them to see if they're a sales qualified lead. So every marketing qualified lead is not a sales qualified lead. Um, so I think
yeah,
that's the problem that organizations don't understand. When they're so focused on that bottom of funnel, they're not understanding the importance of filling that funnel. And what ends up happening, inevitably, the bottom of funnel taps out. You've quoted every person you can in your CRM, you've gotten every lead you can, you've contacted everybody. Whoa, now we don't have cash flow, we have no sales, we need marketing to generate leads. You
right.
should be doing that all along, so that you're constantly filling that funnel and that bottom never taps out. So that's really, I think that's how I would address that question of the qualified leads.
Yeah.
And everybody does consider something different when they say qualified. So that's another question I ask the sales team when I go in. What do you consider a qualified lead? Is that just someone who's like ready to buy? Not every person
Right.
is going to buy from you. Not every conversation is going to turn into a sale.
Right, and maybe not right then either, right? The timing might not be right. It could be I've heard stories of people saying, I remembered from years ago when they end up getting some deal from something that, they planted
Hmm.
the seed years ago. It's crazy. Yeah, I think my issue on the personal level is, like, a lot of times I think what I do, and, trying to market my own business is, um, it's tough because you kind of want to get right to the bottom of that funnel and tell them what you do and do you want to buy right now. And it's obviously it's like proposing on the first date or whatever the old analogy
Mhm.
is. But I definitely can be guilty of that. And is it a lot different B2B? Because mostly you've done B2B versus business to
Mhm.
consumer. Is there a lot of differences between them?
Yeah, huge difference. I mean, between B2B marketing, business to business, and B2C, business to consumer, it's kind of a totally different animal. So there's a lot of different tactics and techniques and different things you focus on. Like, for instance, with manufacturing, a lot of the small to mid-sized companies don't have really big budgets. So what I've always done is, how do I get the most bang for no buck? And that's usually search engine optimization. That's how do we get Google to rank and index you without throwing a ton of money at paid ads. And so,
Right, 'cause
how do
that's
we
something
drive
you can kinda control on your end, right? On the the manufacturers, they can do it on their on themselves, right?
well, SEO, a lot of times people think it's about your website, like identifying your keywords and optimizing the front end and back end of your website and your content. And that's just one aspect of SEO. SEO involves so many tactics like claiming local listings, claiming free listings like IndustryNet, ThomasNet. People think they have to pay for a listing there. They can claim a free listing and they will get referral traffic from those websites. You can get referral traffic from Google My Business and Bing and Nextdoor and all these local listings if you just have a completely filled out profile. Backlinks are very important. So contributing content to trade publications, trade associations, sending out press releases and getting those published with news outlets. And then, of course, they're all digital as well. So then you get a backlink from an authoritative website to your website.
Right.
YouTube, Google owns YouTube. Social media, those are all things that factor into Google's algorithm as to how they rank and index you. So it's got to be like a comprehensive program. But yeah, I do specialize in B2B. I've done some B2C. I mean, I worked at the J.M. Smucker Company. I worked at PNC Bank. I worked at Case Western Reserve University. I
Right.
get very specific kinds of experience. But I found that B2B and manufacturing is like really where my heart is.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit more about leads. I know we kinda did a little bit, but everybody, myself included, everybody kinda wants leads or talk about leads. Um, maybe just talk about how do you approach that? A client comes to you and says, "Hey, we need more leads. Gina, what should we do?" Kinda maybe walk us through your process or what you kinda think about it.
Yeah, well, I would say a traditional agency would say lead generation is pay per click and paid ads. So Facebook ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, LinkedIn ads, and this paid lead generation strategy.
Yeah.
I step back, and because I really come from that SEO organic traffic side, that
Right.
I feel the two can really work in tandem and they are cumulative. So I feel like you shouldn't be running out there spending a bunch of money on paid ads if you haven't done the organic work. So I
Yeah.
start out with doing the organic work, and then it takes about 6 to 9 months for Google to rank and index you once you've done the proper organic optimization. So while Google's doing its thing over here, then you can turn your money and your time and resources to paid and supplement that. So start to pay to get traffic to your website while you're waiting for the referral traffic to increase.
Uh,
Also, I tell people paid Google ads and things like that, you aren't going to get any traction with little budget. If you think you're going to spend like $500 or $1,000 a month on paid ads, it's not going to get you anything. I when I tell my clients, you have to do like a minimum of $1,500 a month. An example, my last client, a manufacturing company, he had tapped out his bottom of funnel, brought me on board because his funnel was empty, no cash flow, no leads coming in. I did a 10-day Google ad campaign, $5,000. I spent $5,000 in 10 days.
okay.
I brought him in 35 qualified leads. They quoted 3/4 of those. So that was a get it done fast, get it done quick. I don't advise that. That's not the right way to do it. But
Yeah.
I got it done. But it costs you money. I mean,
Yeah.
$5,000 in 10 days. That's a big
Right.
spend. Where if you had consistently been doing lead generation along the way, you wouldn't have gotten to a point of desperation where there's nothing left in the funnel.
Right.
Um, so
So it's
like
almost
for
yeah,
us,
sorry, go
Andy,
ahead.
like you and I, we're small businesses, right?
Right.
We don't have thousands of dollars a month to throw away on ads. So I try to
Right.
focus on the organic. I do networking. I go to events. Like tomorrow, I'm going to a manufacturing conference all day. I do a lot of LinkedIn outreach. I focus on the SEO. I do email marketing campaigns, a lot of content showing thought leadership, podcasts, and things like this,
Yeah.
where you are seen as an industry expert and you're getting your name out there and getting in front of people. Like those are things that you can do that just cost you time. They don't
Right.
cost you money.
Interesting. Yeah, and not that we have time to get into this, but just while you were talking, the one thing I thought of is that the trend that I'm hearing too with AI and people like, now with everybody, eventually it used to be, if you wanted to find out something, what's a good business intelligence company or whatever in Dayton, Ohio or whatever, you'd Google that, and you still most that would, but there's more and more people that are going to ChatGPT, something else to ask that question. And based on shout out to, I think it's Brand Rank. There's a person that is there's it's a startup in the Cincinnati area. They're trying to form this company that kind of aggregates what the AI is saying about your brand. But according to what I'm hearing, like you're going to have less and less influence over, like it's more. In other words, what I'm trying to say is you should definitely invest in your own assets because that's going to be kind of what the AI is going to be mining your website, all the stuff that you can control. That's going to where the AI is going to go to kind of find that stuff out. Whereas, now you can pay to influence it somewhat. And I'm not saying that it's always going to be that way, but just I think that's all the more reason to focus on, your internal what internals are wrong word. What's the is it owned? What's the I always forget the term with marketing. There's like owned versus
Paid and owned.
that's what it is.
So
So
it's
your
kind of
own
the same thing, like organic versus paid,
okay,
SEO versus SEM. One thing you can do, I'll give you a free tip.
sure.
There is stuff on YouTube even. If you Google or go to YouTube and say, get your business indexed with ChatGPT, it will
Right.
tell you how to do that. And I've done it for my business. And
Uh-huh.
it's just what you're doing is you're inputting data about your business and you're getting AI to recognize that you exist and what you do. What do you specialize in? So
Right.
that you're teaching it about you and your business. And that, like you said, now it's becoming one of the biggest search engines. It's not just an AI ask it tool, it's a search engine now. And so just like Google is a search engine, how do we get Google to rank and index us? We now have to worry about how do we get AI tools to rank and index us.
Right. Interesting. And I'm guessing too, not to deviate too much from the topic, but in the manufacturing space, like the company you previously, mentioned, like it's a very specific thing, right? It's not, very, the vibration tech, whatever you're, so like when they're targeting people, I mean, it's very specific, right? Who they're trying to,
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of a different world than like a B2C where you're, anybody, that's married and has kids or something like that. I mean, there's only a, probably much smaller market for some of the what these manufacturers produce, right? And I'm
Yeah,
guessing
it's
if they've been
very
around a
targeted.
while, they probably know who the players are. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is reputation. Like the last company I worked with, they manufactured park model homes, which are cottages and cabins built to a specific standard that qualifies them as a recreational vehicle because they're built on a chassis with wheels.
Okay.
And they sold B2B. So a lot of recreational vehicle manufacturers, they would sell to you or me, like, hey, I want this little tiny home
Right.
that I could put on my property. Joe and Mary can come and buy this. They were targeting parks, campgrounds, resorts, migrant housing, veterans housing, oil and gas pipeline worker housing. So
Huh.
they were, hunting and fishing camps, marinas. So they were really going after a completely different demographic. So, they were looking at the owners of this
Yeah.
land that were looking to expand their service offering and be able to offer kind of like the privacy and comfort of your home in a remote setting. And also it's a revenue generator. So if you think about camping, you only go camping in the season, right? So like
Right. Yeah.
off season and there's the on season. Well, what does the campground do in the off season? It just lies empty and vacant. If you have these buildings there, you can rent them out as Airbnbs year round.
Yeah.
So these
Interesting.
strategies of how to figure out what's the pain point of your audience and how do you help them solve that pain. That's really what marketing is about, like problem solving.
Right. I love that. That's great. So when I was kind of in the corporate world, and I'm sure it's greatly expanded, but years back, there was a big push at the end of my time there to, do all this marketing automation such. They were looking at vendors and they were doing, all the different things. I'm guessing, that's still very relevant and still popular today. Or tell me about what you've experienced with that, with marketing automation technologies.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, if anything, it's more prevalent now than it was before. Um, so in days gone by, maybe you had a CRM, and all a CRM is customer relationship management. So Salesforce is a CRM. It keeps track of all your data, all your customers' contact
Right.
information, every time you reach out to them, every time you call them, email them, talk to them. But then there's the marketing automation portion of those systems that is about how do I program marketing automation logic and create drip campaigns and nurture sequences so that we go back to that funnel. We talked about that marketing funnel.
Yeah.
How do I move those buyers from the top of funnel to the middle of funnel to the bottom of funnel? And that's through those marketing automation campaigns. And we've all been victims of them. Just think about it. You go to a website, you put in your email, you sign up to get email from the company,
Right.
and you get these email. Now, the difference between a drip campaign and a nurture sequence is that a drip campaign is automatic. It's I, Miss Marketer, programmed into my system that every 2 weeks I'm going to email you, Andy,
Yeah.
with the specials that we have available this week. So every 2 weeks you get an email from me. It's not tailored, it's not customized. Everybody in my database gets that same email every 2 weeks. Where a nurture sequence is a reaction to an action that the customer took. So
Okay.
let's say Andy fills out that email and wants to subscribe to my e-newsletter. He gets an email from me saying, "Thank you for subscribing, Andy. It's good to have you as part of our family. Look forward to future emails.
Mhm.
Click here if you want to read our blog." So Andy clicks there, and boom, the system recognizes Andy went to the blog. He's
Right.
interested. Let's serve him up this other piece of content. So you went to this certain page on our website. Oh, Andy is interested in that. Let's give him this. So everywhere you click is different than where I'm going to click. What you're looking for is different from what I'm looking for. So your nurture sequence with that company, you're going to get a different series of email than I'm going to get, because
Right.
when we were on their site or engaging with their social media or engaging with their email, we both took different actions. And so that's the difference. And drip campaigns, nurture sequences, marketing automation are relevant to all organizations at all scale right now.
That's what I was gonna ask. So, like, could a small mid-sized company can still take advantage of a lot of that, or is this just for, billion-dollar, huge companies?
Oh no, I mean, with my small to mid-sized manufacturers, when I get them set up on that CRM and marketing automation platform, I encourage them to take advantage of it as a lead generation tool, because again, it's not costing you any money. It's just creating the content and the time to program the logic. But I'm doing like a nurture sequence with my clients right now. Basically, every week I was writing a blog, a
Uh-huh.
thought leadership blog. And so every week in front of a certain subset of my CRM, I'm serving up that new blog each week.
And
And
this is
that's
for
top of
your
funnel.
this is for your business, or
Yeah, that's for my business.
yeah, that's
So
great.
I'm
We
serving
need
up
to
top of
talk, I guess.
funnel. Yeah, right now I'm not doing any drip campaigns because to do drip, I don't have the man or woman power to do that, because
Right.
I'm a consultancy of one with some subcontractors.
Yeah, right.
And right now, I don't need to do that. I'm focused more on business development for my own business than I am on the marketing automation portion. But because a solopreneur like us, we
Mhm.
don't need 5,000 leads a year
Right,
to
right.
get 800 customers a year. You need 5 to 7 clients. So
Yeah.
when you're doing the marketing automation, it's more aggressive to generate a higher volume of leads for a more sustainable operation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy the stuff I'm sure it's, like, drastically improved too, because I mean, it was nuts the stuff you could do as, you have all these branches. I think the one we and it's probably called something totally different now, but I think it was Salesforce's Journey Builder at the time, and you could do all these it was crazy the decision points you could make and, depending on, if the person, depending on their gender, you could serve different material depending on all kinds of I mean, it's
Yes, it can get very complex building the marketing automation logic. It's like solving a Rubik's cube.
right, where I've kind of come in has been on the other side of it is, like, some clients have come to me to try to report on all that because, obviously all that stuff we mentioned, there's a data point with that, hey, they clicked on the blog and then they got sent this and did they look at it and all those different so there's I've helped some clients with some marketing dashboards to kind of wrap their hands around that because otherwise, you have all these transactions, these little microtransactions kind of happening, and if you don't have something that kind of bubbles it up to kind of try to make sense of it all, you can kind of get lost with it. So, um,
Yeah, that's why you'd asked me about data and why data is important. Not just showing a return on investment, but it's also important for adjusting your strategy. So let's look in the process. What's working, what's not working? What are people opening and clicking on? What are they not? What do they like? What do they not like? So it helps to inform your strategy to adjust according to what your customers are telling you. Each action they take is telling you something valuable. And a lot of people don't dig into that data. And that's why people like you are so important, because you can help make that data, I think, translate it. I think people get overwhelmed by it. There's so much data
mhm.
out there. They don't know what to do with it, or they don't know what it means. And they need people like you and I that can say, hey, I looked at your Google Analytics this month and I saw a huge spike in traffic to your website on
Yeah,
August 2nd. You had like 20,000 visitors on your website. That tells me something. That tells me somebody's trying to hack your website. How good is your security? What do you have on your website for security? What has your web developer done? Who's hosting and maintaining your site? And I saved a site once because somebody hacked it, put malware on their site.
I
I
mean,
went in, got it all isolated, cleaned up. They could have taken that company down. And these hackers now, when they take your site down, you can't restore it. Like, they will clean out all the data and take everything, and you are left with nothing and have to start from scratch again. So I
right,
I think analytics can really help you with security too, with your organization.
right. Yeah, well, thanks for that. Yeah, it's always I love the intersection kind of the marketing and the data. I've been kind of in my career. I've always been kind of even though I've been kind of a technical person, I've always kind of worked in marketing departments or close to them. For a while, I maintained the marketing database at the big company I worked at, and so definitely love talking about data and marketing. Switching topics slightly, like integrity is important to me. Obviously, it's part of my company name. So you have a story to share. I'd love to hear you about one time when you turned business down. So tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, my philosophy is, if I do the right thing, the money will come. And if I put people first and am not out there to steal from them, gouge them, provide them with a disservice. And I gotta say, even in marketing, other marketing people will admit this. There are a lot of agencies out there that have given marketing a bad reputation. They just go in, take the client's money, give the client what the client wanted. They don't look at the organization holistically, and they don't always do what's in the best interest of the client. It's about upsell, upsell, upsell.
Right.
Getting commissions, and I don't do that. So what and we're going to talk about this next, but I'm going to mention now Lean Six Sigma, and we'll
Sure.
talk
Yeah.
about
Go
more
ahead.
what that is. But Lean Six Sigma is a methodology, and it's one of these things, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And it teaches you to look holistically at an organization, not at like your microcosm. So I went into this client that Andy's referring to, and they asked me to do lead generation. And of course, they always go to the end of the process instead of the beginning. We have no marketing, but we want you to do lead generation.
Right.
I said, let's step back a minute and do a sales and marketing assessment. So I did that audit I told you about.
Yeah.
Interviewed their whole sales team, looked at their cycle, their timeline, their playbook, their process, audited their tech stack, looked at what they had done to date in the marketing world. I also did some voice of customer work, and I interviewed like 3 to 5 of their clients. And I found 2 things to be true. Their salespeople hated them, were very unhappy. There were culture issues in the company. I mean, we've all been there. We've all worked for companies
Yeah,
we don't like or bosses we don't like because there's a toxic work environment.
for sure.
They were aging out. 3 of them were about to retire, and there was no succession plan in place. And then their customers were angry because they were promising 3-month delivery times on this $1 million piece of equipment, and they were delivering in 18 months with no communication along the way, costing their customers money. The only
Right.
reason people bought from them is they're the only manufacturer of this piece of equipment. So I said to them, now any other agency would have just taken their 70-some thousand dollars and done their marketing, 12-month marketing campaign, lead generation, whatever. I
Right.
said, in good faith, I can't generate more leads for you that you can't serve. You're going to have more unhappy clients. You're going to cost them money. And I believe in my heart that your company won't be in business in a few years if you don't fix these 2 issues. So I put them in touch with a nonprofit HR consultancy to help them with their culture and their succession plan issues. And
Right.
I put them in touch with their local manufacturing extension partnership to help them with their plant floor and their operations challenges. And they needed to get that fixed before they did marketing. So that was something I did. I'm still in touch with that company. It's been about a year now. They're trying to dig out of the issues, and they're working on those things. And I hope in the future to be able to work together with them. I think they had a lot of respect for me, that I didn't just take their money,
Yeah.
but I cared about their business and their employees. And that wouldn't have happened with a typical marketing agency. They wouldn't have interviewed the customers. They wouldn't have interviewed the sales team. They wouldn't have identified these challenges. And they probably would have failed in their marketing, because you're not going to see a return on investment with your marketing and lead generation if you've got an 18-month lead time and you can't fill orders. So that
Right.
was the example that you had asked me about.
It's impressive. I mean, that's great. Well, hats off to you for doing that. That's, you don't see that a lot, and I love highlighting those kind of stories because
Thank you.
it's a great. So way to go, Gina. That's awesome.
I'm going to give people the help they need. It's like, even if it's not me, it's like, what do you really need? And that's the role of a good salesperson, is to listen, ask questions, and find out what the customer really, really needs, not what they think they need.
Very true. Wow. So let's dig into Six Sigma a little bit. You got into it just and I'm at my previous company. They had kind of an initiative, so I'm slightly versed in it, but I think I got my yellow belt. I think was the so I knew a little bit about it, but I'd love your tell us about it. I know you got into a little bit, but it's just give us kind of a real quick overview and why people should care about it.
Yeah. Well, first, there are probably a lot of people on this call that don't know what Lean Six Sigma is. So I should just
Sure.
give you the basic. So Lean and Six Sigma are 2 different methodologies that kind of got combined to work together to transform companies. So I'm trying to think the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
So Lean is more about
It's like reducing waste, isn't it? I
yeah,
think.
Lean is about reducing waste, while not really, it's backwards. Lean, one is about reducing waste, one is about process improvement. And so the process improvement reduces waste. So that's the way I should be saying it. And with Lean Six Sigma, it combines the Six Sigma methods and tools with the lean manufacturing principles. So the goal is to decrease variation, eliminate waste, eliminate defects, increase efficiencies. So, for example, and Lean Six Sigma, according to that methodology, they only allow 3.4 defects per million. So imagine you make teddy bears for a
Right.
living. Out of a million teddy bears, you are only allowed to have 3.4 of them that have a defect.
That's
So
pretty
the stitching's not right, or the stuffing sticks out, or the eye is crooked. And so it's really, and it's also customer focused. So we increase these processes, we improve these processes to make the customer happier, to increase the quality to the customer, to increase their satisfaction. So what the belts are, and yes, you may be like, yellow belt, green belt, black belt, that sounds like martial arts. The system, the belting system is based on the karate methodology. So a white belt is someone who just, you're basically a white belt now. You know, you've been introduced to Lean Six Sigma and you know what it is. A
right.
yellow belt, you learn all the principles and tools. You get a familiarity with it. A green belt, you can actually do a project. So you can do a process improvement project. And then a black belt kind of manages the green belts, acts as their advisor. And then there's something called a master black belt. And a master black belt kind of runs the whole facility. So they're not just on the shop floor doing a process improvement. They're looking at human resources, marketing, sales, plant floor, and how do we improve the whole ecosystem to make the entire business more sustainable. And I have a friend who's a master black belt, and he guarantees the manufacturers that if he goes in and does an engagement, which these master black belt projects are like 6 to 12 months,
Yeah.
he will save them a minimum of $1.5 million.
Wow.
So it's very powerful
That's
stuff.
impressive.
And the way that I got introduced to it when I was at Case Western Reserve University, oddly enough, not a manufacturer, right?
Right. Yeah.
They required all of us to get our yellow belts at least because they taught Lean Six Sigma there. And they're like, well, we need to drink the Kool-Aid. If we're teaching it and certifying people in it, our people should be certified. And then as a manager, I was required to do 3 Lean Six Sigma projects per year in the marketing department. So I did that. And then last year I got my green belt and I'm working on my black belt right now. So
Impressive.
do
Yeah.
I want to go out and be a Lean Six Sigma practitioner full time? No. But what it helps me do is when I go into a manufacturing facility, I can speak their language. I can understand their operations. I can understand their challenges. The example you had me give before about the client I turned down, you learn to be more than a marketer, to look at the
Right.
organization holistically. And it also helps me with my marketing process because a process is a process. It doesn't matter what the process is. You can always decrease defects and be more efficient. And I'll give you an example. I know this is people, it's probably like going over their head. They're like, what?
No,
I
it's
never
just
heard of
great.
this. But here's a really dumbed down example because you're not doing all the data, you're not doing all the charts and graphs.
Right.
But say you have a pet, a dog, a cat, a hamster, a bird, whatever.
Right. Yep.
I have a pet. And what I was doing was what most people do when I feed my pet in the morning. I would go downstairs, I'd go to the pet food bowls on the floor, I'd pick them up, I'd take them over to the kitchen counter. I'd go walk over to the closet, I'd get out the bag of pet food, I'd take it to the counter. I'd fill up the pet food bowl, I'd take the bowl back to where the bowls were on the floor for the pet. I'd go back to the counter, get the bag of food,
Right.
walk over to the closet and put the bag of food back in the closet. No big deal. That's what's wrong with that? Well, one day after I learned Lean Six Sigma, I looked at that and I was like, dummy, like take the bowl to the bag and the closet or take the bag to the bowl on the floor. You don't have to make all these trips back and forth to the counter. And that's just kind of an example of a process improvement I did at home, you know?
That's great. I'm pretty sure I'm probably doing the exact wrong thing.
We don't think about it. You know, we have our methods and systems of doing things, and sometimes they're not very efficient.
Well,
So
I love that though because it kind of highlights like that's kind of what I was going to ask, and I think you definitely already answered it. I mean, when people that don't know much about it, they, you hear Lean Six Sigma, oh, that's for, that's not really for me. That's for people making cars but it's for everybody, right?
Oh, I can tell you it is being used now. It started out in manufacturing. It is being used in every industry you could imagine now. My friend who's the master black belt primarily works with hospital systems.
Wow.
Think about it. You go in for surgery. Do you want them to make a mistake? Do you want them to have a
Probably not.
defect?
Yeah.
No. So hospitals are really concerned about quality and about minimizing defects and mistakes and rework and increasing efficiencies because they've got a bunch of surgeries scheduled for that day. So how do they become more efficient without making more mistakes? So you can, like, I learned it in a college. There are banks using it. There are a lot of restaurants, a lot of food service, so much inefficiency in a restaurant. This is over here and that's over there, and walk over here and fry the burger, and then go over here and put the toppings on, and then go over there. And so they're looking at systematizing things. I was in Chipotle the other day,
Oh yeah.
and I was like, oh God, I want to talk to the headquarters and do a Lean Six Sigma project because this is so inefficient. And,
Was it
it was just, I,
in there? You would think on the surface they would be just because they kind of have that whole assembly line, but maybe that's not. There's probably a lot that you see that other people wouldn't see because of your know-how.
yeah, yeah. So those are examples and ways they're being used other than in manufacturing.
Do you ever see the movie Founder? He
Mm-mm.
kind of, that's about how McDonald's got started, and there's one part where they kind of show them in a parking lot, like when it was kind of when they were starting to take off, and they were in a parking lot, kind of like, and they used, I think, chalk or some kind of drawings, like to kind of test out the different, like where the stations would be. And they were,
Huh.
obviously it wasn't called Lean Six Sigma or whatever, but it was kind of that same concept of process improvement. It was a really neat scene. But it was pretty, made you think, like, they kind of kept going over and over again about how to make it more efficient. And
Well,
so
I
yeah,
just
it's
went
pretty
to
neat.
IMDb and I added it to my watch list.
Nice.
I
Yeah.
never thought that. Wow, that's interesting.
It was, that's only a little part of the more part of the movie's different than that, but at least that was just one little nugget that stuck out for me. But yeah, but Gina, it's been so great talking to you. Anything else that you want to leave our viewers with? Anything else we didn't cover to get into?
No, I think that was enough for 1 hour to blow people's minds with. So
Yeah.
if you're overwhelmed and you want to talk about any of this stuff anymore with me, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to always answer questions, do discovery calls. If you haven't been able to tell already, I'm a helper, I'm a giver, and I think we raise each other up, and we're in this together. And so I love to be a mentor. I've taught college for many, many years as an adjunct. So I love to mentor and help people and give them resources and connect them with other people who can help them. So if you can, feel free to reach out to me.
Well, thanks, Gina. This has been so great, and great getting to know you more. And yeah, definitely consider Gina for all your marketing needs. And otherwise, thank you everyone for joining me, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks again, Gina.
Thank you, Andy.